Hey guys, AJ here, back with another one. So I hope everyone's had a good week. I want to say happy Friday to everyone. And thanks to all my new subscribers. Thanks for everyone that comments on these videos. I appreciate it. It's always fun to engage in the comments. Please like and subscribe, by the way. And today, we're going to look a little bit more at this Stacey Abrams, Brian Kemp debate. It's pretty long. I was trying to get through it, but there's a couple other videos I had to drop. And yeah, let's get back into this. So if you recall, they were talking, Stacey Abrams had asked Shane, I believe Wilson, I forget his name, but about China buying up land in Atlanta. So let's get back into it.
As it is, we also know it's deeply problematic when we do not have the adequate safeguards in place. That's one of the reasons I've raised concerns about WeChat and about the purchase of farmland. But what we know overall is that we need a governor who...
So they're talking about different types of cryptocurrencies or alternative currencies, and what as governor, what Stacey Abrams would do to if Georgia would be using those currencies or recognizing their use.
Who's conversant in these issues, who understands that, for example, in the state of Georgia, we have access to $3.5 billion in American currency that could be delivered tomorrow to save our hospitals and to save...
With the Federal Reserve, who's got us in...
Example, in the state of Georgia, we have... My intention is to do what's best for the state of Georgia every single day.
Thank you. Shane Hazel, you get a 30-second rebuttal.
Yeah. Working with the Federal Reserve, who's got us into the mess that we are in right now because of a centralized fiat currency, it will be absolutely worthless. They will be dangling carrots in front of the governor, in front of the executives, in front of the legislature to do exactly what their mandates are. If they are mandating that they take the property of people, then they will do it. If they want to invade your homes, your privacy, your businesses, they will do it because of CBDCs.
All right. Stacey Abrams, please ask your question to Brian Kemp.
Absolutely. Mr. Kemp, under your leadership, there is currently a 100-year gap between minority-owned businesses and majority-owned businesses. Although minorities comprise 48% of the population, they only generate 12.2% of the business revenue in the state. And under every analysis that we have seen, it will take 100 years to close that gap, given the current process that you have in place. You served 4 years in the Senate, 8 years as Secretary of State in charge of businesses. You served 4 years as governor. What are your concrete, specific, targeted plans to decrease and address the racial equity gap currently facing contracting and purchasing for minority-owned businesses?
Governor Kemp?
Well, I would remind Georgians that the first part of my plan was keeping our state open for business and allowing all business people and working Georgians to work when Stacey Abrams was criticizing me for doing that. Also pushing to get our kids back in the classroom when, again, Stacey Abrams was criticizing me for doing that. A lot of Georgians, including African Americans and other minorities, cannot go to work if their kids are not in the classroom. We have the lowest unemployment rate in the country for African Americans. We also were named we're in the top 10 of the states for black entrepreneurship in the state of Georgia. So our economy is incredible, and we will continue to work with all of those entrepreneurs in the days ahead and working class Georgians, because we are the ones that have been fighting for you when Miss Abrams was not.
Now, while Brian Kemp is answering, I'm just going to give my answers to this question. So Stacey Abrams is doing this whole victimhood type of BS about, racial inequality in businesses and blah, blah, blah. The black community, we have enough black millionaires and billionaires and champions of industry where if we were to put our resources together, we could do a lot to solve this racial inequity gap or whatever she's talking about. You know, there's black entrepreneurs that are starting businesses now, starting charter schools, doing a lot of things. But the issue is that we don't unify it as a community in the same way that Jewish people do, Koreans, Chinese, Arabs, etc. What she is suggesting in her platform is somehow having like a redistribution of wealth in a way to say these people are successful, and the only reason why they are is because of one variable, meaning like race. So these white people or Asians or anyone who's successful are more successful than, say, blacks only because of race when it's a multitude of factors. So, for instance, you can say race, right? Okay, there's blacks are unsuccessful and then whites are successful. Let's give her that. But then you add in culture. When you look at the numbers, Nigerians tend to earn as much as Asians, who earn more than white people do. So there you have color and you have culture. So that argument about just plain racial inequality doesn't really add up once you add in multiple variables. But what should be done on our side as black people is to once again be like how blacks were in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, when we had the Harlem Renaissance, when we were the group that built Black Wall Street and built all these HBCUs that are still around now. And yes, Black Wall Street got burned down, but there's a lot of other institutions that are still around. And we can make those advances. We can, but to just have a simplistic, idiotic argument that, it's just race is just not productive. And there's nothing worse than seeing money, time, and resources going to solutions that I don't think are going to work. Let's get back into it.
We were giving tax refunds. We were doing tax cuts. We were suspending the gas tax to help you deal with 40-year high inflation when she was criticizing us.
Stacey Abrams, 30-second rebuttal.
I would point out that Mr. Kemp did not address the needs of purchasing and contracts for black and brown-owned businesses, which is what he has refused to do for the last 16 years. We know that $10.9 billion has been delivered to the state of Georgia through two recent acts at the congressional level.
And also, I've worked with contracts before, and I always say, look, if we can... You want to contract to the best person. So if you want to have your house built by a contractor, the best contractor will get the job. So if your product is excellent, then the market is going to take the product. If we as black people can have excellence equated with black products, then there won't be any gap because people want the best products. Do you really think that they're going to care if, I have a Cadillac, or I don't even know what a good example. Let's say that you're an architect and you build really good buildings. Like you build the best buildings in the world. Do you really think that people are going to care what your skin color is? And I think Andrew Tate said it best. He said, people make money. Those who really want to make money don't care about race. He had a little speech and it was like, do you really think that a black billionaire, an Arab billionaire, a white billionaire, and an Asian billionaire look at each other and go, oh, you're a different skin color. I don't want to make any money. No, they're trying to make money. So blacks, what we need to do is focus on having our products be excellent, be the best products out there, and the problem will solve itself.
And Brian Kemp does not have a plan for making certain that people of color have access to those contracts, access to purchasing. It was only in July of this year that he finally acknowledged that there might be a problem. He has said that we need to study it. I would tell him just cheat off of my paper. I know the answer. We need a governor who actually believes in equity, racial equity, economic equity in the state of Georgia, and I will deliver.
Thank you. Shane Hazel, please ask your question to Brian Kemp.
Brian, in 2020, on April 2nd, you locked down Georgia, threatening peace.
Now, like I said, this Shane guy, this libertarian guy makes this whole debate worth watching. I mean, I said it in my previous videos. I'm not a libertarian. I agree with some of the stuff that they say, but I believe in theory it sounds good, but in practice it doesn't. But it's always good to have this guy as kind of like a wild card in this debate because everyone really wants to see Stacey Abrams and Brian Kemp. But hey, he gets in the ring and he's throwing some hands. So I like it.
Peaceful people with force and coercion. You called people in Georgia non-essential, and it killed millions of jobs. You bent the knee to big pharma and pushed a vaccine that was untested on people, and it has killed people. They have lost their loved ones. You've allowed bureaucracy to invade our businesses. And then you had the audacity to brag about record tax revenue. You want to say sorry to anybody?
So is that a question?
Brian Kemp said, is that a question? Or as their locked eyes like, oh.
That is a question. Do you want to say sorry to anybody?
Well, look, I'll be glad to talk about my record because obviously Mr. Hazel is gravely mistaken. If you look at the executive orders that I signed, we said every business in Georgia was essential. There was a few that we asked to help us stop the spread, flatten the curve, build PPE supplies and hospital bed capacities. Because unlike him, I was getting the calls from hospitals saying, hey, we are out of surgical gowns. We're out of masks. We need ventilators. And we were literally working 24/7 to supply those items while also keeping our economy open in this state. And as you know, I was the first state to open the small parts that we asked to close, and our recovery's been as good as any state in the country. We have had 2 record years of economic development because of our business environment, working with the General Assembly to make sure that we're putting Georgians first and Georgia businesses and Georgia workers first, and that's what I'm committed to continuing to do.
30 seconds, Mr. Hazel.
You should have put...
Does anyone remember Weird Science, the movie from the 80s? There was this like weird troll looking dude in the movie. That's who this guy Shane looks like. Maybe I'll try and find a picture, but does anyone remember this guy? He had a big, like an egg head and big ears, and he used to always play weird roles in the 80s and the early 90s. I'll have to get his name.
Put Georgia freedom first, period. You didn't have the power to lock down businesses, and you signed the executive order on April 2nd. It was clear as day. I sat there and watched you do it, and I was like, there is no coming back from this. The idea that the default was to lock down Georgia instead of trusting Georgians with their freedom to adapt in a time of very changing circumstances, I think is a tyrant move, and I think the left and right are fascist and communist socialists, whereas we're talking about real liberty, trusting Georgians with those decisions.
Thank you, Mr. Hazel. Brian Kemp, you have the final question in this round for Shane Hazel.
Well, I would just ask Mr. Hazel if
he wants to say, I just want to ask Mr. Hazel, what the fuck is wrong with you, man?
he supports the things that we have done because we were open and Georgians were working and we've had excess revenue. So instead of doing big government...
That's our tax money.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I don't support it because here's the thing is when we get to that point, when we talk about what you're doing...
ask my
finish your question.
Please go ahead.
I would just say, do you support the tax cuts we've done, returning $1 billion of taxpayer money and suspending the gas tax for Georgians to help fight through 40-year high inflation and bad domestic energy policy?
Georgia, I hope you hear me when I say libertarians think taxation is theft. It's your money. It's your property. You should be able to determine what you do with it. I don't support the fact that you haven't ended qualified immunity. I don't support the fact that you haven't ended civil asset forfeiture. I don't support...
Now, that is something I agree with. They need to end qualified immunity and they need to end civil asset forfeiture. I'm going to do a video on that. That's one of the things that pisses me off. And for those who don't know what civil asset forfeiture is, Google it. It's basically, let's just say that a lot of my friends who are from Africa or from India tend to do business in cash, right? So let's just say that you're like an Indian guy and you sell a Dunkin' Donuts business, and you're driving from Florida to Alabama and you got like 175 G's in the car. And the cops pull you over, they search your car, they can confiscate that money and go, oh, you have to prove that this money is not for nefarious purposes. Next thing you know, you're trying to get your money back. That's perfectly legal. Different law enforcement agencies at all levels make billions of dollars every year by just taking people's money. And even if you do get the money back, you got to pay court fees and court costs and all kinds of stuff to get your own money back. That's crazy.
Support the fact that you haven't ended the drug war, you haven't ended nonviolent crime, you haven't ended cash bail, you haven't ended no-knock raids, you haven't implemented community review boards, and you haven't banned blacked-out cop cars that go after people for more money. It's ridiculous.
Dude makes a lot of good points.
De-escalation by the executive to leave peaceful people alone in the state of Georgia. That's my message to both of you, to everybody in the state who wears a badge. Stop going after peaceful people.
Mr.
Man, dude's dropping truth bombs, man.
Kemp, 30-second rebuttal.
Well, that's simply
What the fuck is wrong with you, man?
not true. As Georgians know, I have followed the laws and the Constitution of this state. And I ran on going after criminal street gangs because I knew there was an issue in our state when other people wouldn't even talk about it and the media wouldn't acknowledge it. And you look at the amount of fentanyl that's coming across the southern border because of bad border policies from this administration. Every governor in the
I like how he pivots to the border. Dive, dick, duck, dodge, and dodge, right?
country's having to deal with that. So yes, I'm going to go after bad people that are selling bad drugs and killing our children and our other citizens.
The free market way to do that would be to allow cannabis and psilocybin to handle the mental health issue.
See, this Shane dude, he's getting his words in.
Okay, well, I wasn't talking about cannabis. I was talking about
I'll call him Mr. Hazel because I keep getting his name wrong.
deadly
Gentlemen,
Stop busting them then.
Gentlemen, we're going to move on. That concludes our second round. For those just joining us, this is the general election debate between candidates for governor. We will now go back to the panel to ask questions to the candidate of their choice until we run out of time. As a point of moderator privilege, I may also ask questions of the candidates, and I will determine when a rebuttal is appropriate. And I'm going to use that moderator privilege right away to ask some education questions. Mr. Kemp, if reelected, you've said you'll push for $65 million dedicated to fighting pandemic learning loss, hiring more counselors, and recruiting teachers to fill shortages.
Good luck recruiting teachers. You know, both of their answers, I haven't watched this since earlier this week, but in my opinion, both of their answers are full of shit because teachers don't make enough, and the risk with no way I couldn't do it, and a lot of teachers have dropped out of the teaching workforce, and they're not coming back.
How do you respond to those who say you should have prioritized those academic-related issues over laws dealing with divisive concepts, parental laws, and obscene books in the past legislative session? Even those who were pushing for those laws in the end say they don't have much teeth.
Well, look, we have been pushing for those things. You can talk to school superintendents around the state. We have worked with them really over the last year and a half, 2 years on learning loss. We've been working with our superintendents and other education groups. We passed 2 different pieces of legislation dealing with the teacher pipeline, which is getting more teachers into the system. Our plan is working with higher education, including our HBCUs and others, to make sure we're getting more of the right people and more of them in the classroom to help mentor our children. This is really just the next step in the process. We are funding K through 12 education in this state more than we ever have per pupil, ever. And that's coming off a recession during the middle of a global pandemic. This includes my promised teacher pay raise of $5,000 that we completed in my first full term, despite having to deal with 2 years of a global pandemic and a recession. So I think it's incredible what we've been doing, but make no mistake, we have more work to do, and I'm committed to doing that.
Thank you. Shane Hayes.
I don't know. I have a lot of friends who are teachers. I have like 6 or 7 friends who are teachers. $5,000 is not a lot. Because let me say this. I know that there's a lot of bad teachers out there, but there's a lot of really good ones too. And they don't make enough money. So they need to make some system to where, like, I'm not a politician, so I'm not going to try and act like I have the answers. But they need to have a way that good teachers get paid a lot and crappy teachers get kicked out.
Hazel, would you tell us your education plan?
Yeah, it's to put it in the hands of the private sector. The government education system that came from Prussia in the 1700s has obviously failed Americans. We don't understand economics. We don't understand our civil culture. We don't understand a whole lot about what goes on behind the scenes in politics. The idea that we want to privatize everything as libertarians is good for education. Think about Walmart having a monopoly on force to teach your children. It's insane. The idea that we do this with a government has side effects. We see them on a daily basis. We need to get government out of education. We need to allow parents.
Now, like I said, that sounds good in theory, but I don't know how that would work in practice. I know that they have charter schools. So maybe they could do like more charter schools and then keep a public option, kind of like how they want, how they propose the model for a public option for healthcare, but you can keep your private health insurance. I don't know. I just think that there should be more options for school, so that if you can afford to send your kids to a better school, like a charter school, then having school choice would be better, because there's some pretty crappy schools out there. When I used to live in Texas, I used to volunteer, and I used to go to schools that were complete. The difference in districts was ridiculous, and it shouldn't be geography that determines this. It should be, look, I might happen to have roots in one area, but I could afford to send my kids to another area. So
to seek out the best education for their kids. And we also believe that they have the responsibility to do so. So to help fix this nation, start here in Georgia, is get the government and the admin out of the classroom and get it out of our lives.
Thank you. Ms. Abrams, in education, you propose a boost in teachers' pay, more state-paid preschool slots for lower-income children and their families, and more. If you win the governor's race, you'll likely have Republican majorities in both chambers. Given what we know about partisan divisions, how will you get your education proposals passed and funded?
So let's begin with what my proposals are. Georgia is sitting on a $6.6 billion surplus. That's money that we have after we've paid every bill, after we've put 15% aside for, say, a rainy day fund. That is money that after we've accounted for increases in population. And I want to invest it in our children and in our families, beginning with making certain that we have pre-K slots. We have 4-year-olds on a waiting list. I've never met a 4-year-old who waits to turn 5. But we can solve that problem with the money we have right now. We can also give an $11,000 pay raise to our teachers instead of a $5,000 pay raise on layaway.
So I actually agree with her there, in that $11,000 raise is better than $5,000. I'm not privy to the actual, budgeting and economics of it, but $11,000 a year is a pretty good raise.
We can make certain that we are increasing access to the pipeline, because teachers aren't in the pipeline because they cannot make enough money to take care of themselves and their families. And that is why under this governor, we have a 67% retention rate. Any other CEO who lost more than 30% of their workforce would be fired. And that is why my plan is to use the resources we have today to plan for today and tomorrow. We've got the money, and we have economists in Georgia and national economists who have looked at my plan, and they say it works. Check my plan out at StaceyAbrams.com. Check my math.
No thanks.
Works.
Thank you. 30 seconds.
Yeah, I'd just like to let people know that, look, my plan is to use the revenue that we have because we've been open. If Stacey Abrams had been your governor over the last 4 years, you wouldn't have that excess revenue because she wanted the state to stay locked down and criticized me when I opened it.
Now, he does make an excellent point, and I also want to bring up that they had talked about Brian Kemp, and he focused on issues like what books to have in schools and all of the, drag queen library hours and all of that, but that matters to parents, And Stacey Abrams has really kind of shown that she's okay with a lot of the stuff kind of getting into schools. I don't want to trigger the algorithm, but a lot of the stuff that a lot of parents would deem to be inappropriate being taught to kids in school, and that matters to a lot of people. I don't know if y'all have seen that school board meeting in Michigan where the Muslim parents and the Christian parents came in, and they were upset, and they had the meeting shut down because they were like, look, we don't want this type of stuff taught to our kids. So parents are concerned. And that's one of the things that Brian Kemp was saying that he was dealing with first instead of using the surplus.
Been using this revenue, and we'll do so in the future, to do another income tax refund and put the money back in your pocket. We're also going to do a property tax relief grant one time that helps you with rising property values and rising property taxes that the counties are not rolling back.
Thank you very much.
If I may respond, because
30 seconds.
This is going to go back and forth between the Democrats and the Republicans. If they keep attacking each other, I'm going to say
we've got to
this is a
move on.
homeschooler.
Ms. Abrams,
Property
30
tax
seconds.
He's getting it in. He's like, I'm the big cheese. I'm gonna save my piece.
For
Mr. Hazel, we've got to move on.
We're not going to be excluded from this.
I'm not excluding you, but he did refer to her, so we are going to have her speak first.
You're going to take money and property from people that don't even attend your schools because they don't agree.
Mr. Hazel.
Yeah, that irks me too because I don't have any kids. I don't plan on having any kids. But then the taxes that I pay go to schools that I'm not going to send my kids to because I'm not going to have any. So that's not fair.
With them.
We want to move on. Ms. Abrams?
I want to point out 3 things that were inaccurate. One, I urged caution because any leader should privilege the lives of those they serve. 38,000 people died in Georgia. We have one county where 1 in every 100 Hancock County residents perished under this governor. And so, yes, I urged caution. But I also urge good math. We have the money in our accounts to do what is right. Money not delivered by Brian Kemp, money delivered by federal Democrats, and money that is delivered by hardworking Georgians who have generated the surplus, and they deserve investments in their lives. And the income taxes that we keep hearing about, 50,000 people are getting $500 million. The rest of us are going to see $193.
Thank you.
That is not a good return on investment.
Shane Hazel, 30 seconds, please.
It's
and then we have
stolen money.
to move on.
Get him, Shane, get him.
It's stolen money from people who have property. The fact that we have property tax in America has got to be one of the most un-American things I've ever heard of. There are a lot of us at homeschool because we don't believe in the government school system. And
that is facts, because I do know some people who homeschool their kids because they do not like what's being taught in school. So, I mean, props to them. If I had kids, I don't think I could do it. But hey, it is what it is.
we are still fleeced every year to the tune of thousands and thousands of dollars to pay for a broken school system that we don't agree with. That's
right.
Both of you guys.
Well,
sorry.
With all due respect, Ms. Abrams called me out again.
All right.
About these
30 seconds, and then we really are going to move on.
But the federal money that we're able to use right now and spend is because our state was open. And we didn't have to use this federal money to backfill state revenues, which has put us in an incredible position to move forward in our state.
Mr. Kemp, we're one of several states that have had the same exact experience. It is disingenuous to claim
not having
done
a
this on your
conversation.
own.
We're going to move on.
It's the people's money.
We're going to move on, gentlemen, and Ms.
So we can stop there. You can see that it got a little heated there. The Mr. Hazel's getting it in too. So despite them going back and forth, whoever this lady is, these moderators did keep it well. I mean, did keep things going pretty smooth. So I'm going to stop it here. I think that one of the last points that Brian Kemp did say is that the reason why they do have the surplus is because he opened Georgia up pretty early compared to other states. So the economy did get going earlier. And people were criticizing him for that, saying, "Oh, you're killing people, blah blah blah." But that surplus is there. Like, I don't live in Georgia. If you do, drop some comments and provide some context. But yeah, I think that this debate was pretty spirited and lively, and I hope you guys have a good weekend. I'm out of here.